What's up, guys? It's Benny. Breaking news here. The jury has reached a verdict in the Diddy trial, but an important reminder before we get to it. Ladies and gentlemen, here are all the photos of Diddy and President Trump back when President Trump was the most powerful and richest man in New York City. He was the most powerful cultural force in New York, and Diddy was loving the fact that President Trump was paying attention to him. Diddy was regularly calling Trump, asking for business advice, wanting to be seen with him, wanting to have his photos taken with him. This was, of course, when Diddy thought that he could use Trump. The moment that the switch flipped for Diddy, and he was told by his handlers, by his operators, that Donald Trump was a threat, this is what Diddy did.
Trump need to be banished. That way of thinking, it's real dangerous.
White men like Trump need to be banished. That way of thinking is real dangerous, says Diddy, who's dressed whiter than Trump here. What a creep. What a freaking loser, this guy. Anyway, celebrity culture disgusts me. Diddy is a disgusting monster. I hope that he rots in prison. The jury has notified the judge. They have returned a verdict on counts 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the court, USA versus Combs. Well, this is wild. A very swift jury deliberation here. We'll get to what that might mean in just a second. The jury says they've reached a partial verdict in the Diddy Combs trial for counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, but not count 1. Okay, what is count 1? Count 1 is the RICO conspiracy charge, still undecided. But Diddy has reportedly been found guilty on counts 2 through 5. Now, that's just pure speculation, ladies and gentlemen. We'll tell you everything that we know. Here we go. Count 2, attempted rape through force or coercion. Count 3, sexual assault with intent to rape. Count 4, sexual battery involving restraint. Count 5, sexual assault under physical restraint. Each of these counts we've looked up multiple times. Each of these counts, depending on what the judge decides to do here, but if you stack all the counts, you're looking at life in prison. Each of these counts are somewhere between 5 to 20 years, and you're looking at life in prison there for Diddy, right? Who's 60. So just a reminder that it's white men like Trump who need to be banished, right? They're real dangerous. Okay. Diddy allegedly found guilty on these charges. Ladies and gentlemen, let's read. Diddy verdict cliffhanger as jury sent back to deliberate the key charge they cannot agree on. Ooh, it is not a good thing. Not a good thing for Diddy when, I said he was 60, he's 55, right? So he's on the wrong side of 50. Okay. When the juries come back so quickly, that means unanimous. And oftentimes when a jury is deliberating someone's innocence, it takes a little while. Obviously, you can have one holdout. But when you have a jury return so swiftly, that's unanimity is what you're looking at there. That's why this is a very, very, very bad sign for Diddy. The jury in Sean Diddy Combs' trial reached a verdict for the 5 charges after 12 hours of deliberation. That's not a lot. But are stuck on a single count. At 4:05 on Tuesday, exactly 1 hour ago, barely 12 hours after they began deliberating, 8 weeks of evidence, the jury sent Judge Arnoon Subramanian a note that said they could not reach a verdict on the racketeering conspiracy. This is the first and the most controversial charge. The charge is applied to the notion that Diddy ran a criminal enterprise aided by staff to entrap and abuse women. The jurors cannot agree on whether or not it sticks, with jurors on both sides telling the court that they are unpersuadable. They have reached a verdict on the 4 other charges: sex trafficking, transportation, prostitution. 4 charges relate specifically to 2 women, Cassie Ventura and another ex-girlfriend. The disgraced music mogul who could spend the rest of his life in prison if convicted of those charges. After a tense hearing on Tuesday, the judge ordered the jury back in deliberations to reach a verdict on count 1. A tense-looking Diddy was surrounded by lawyers, his children, and mother watching nearby. Here we go. But ladies and gentlemen, as the judge has sent the jurors back to deliberate, we will not see a full return for this final charge. Now, this charge, this RICO conspiracy charge, it's a tough one. And the government, led by James Comey's daughter, who strangely was able to sweep under the rug the charges for Epstein and the charges for Sam Bankman-Fried and the charges for Ghislaine Maxwell. She's deep state oligarch James Comey, through his daughter, her name's Maureen Comey, she's doing these trials. And according to the lawyers that we're talking with, she's blowing it. There's so many bigger things at stake here, but Diddy, they're just going to burn Diddy, alive, right? Metaphorically in court to protect what's really happening. Now, the racketeering charge is a tough one. The racketeering charge, the RICO charge, you're going to have to effectively prove that he's the kingpin. And you have to typically how you do a racketeering charge is you get a bunch of the people, you prosecute a bunch of the people under Diddy. That hasn't happened here. You prosecute a ton of people that are underneath him. Ding, 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 ding. Right? And then it leads up and you get all of them to turn on their boss. And then you're able to prove a RICO charge. This is how it's done. The mafia, the mob, so on. But that hasn't been done here. That's why a lot of people are saying they're blowing the biggest charge. Judge Arun Subramanian told jurors to continue deliberating. They could not reach a verdict on count 1, racketeering conspiracy. I received your note that you reached verdicts on 2 through 5, but not on 1. I ask this time that you keep deliberating. The jury has left the courtroom to continue deliberations after the judge's instructions. Shortly after that, they sent a note to the court saying they'll continue deliberations at 9 a.m. Racketeering conspiracy is the most serious charge. Diddy faces a penalty of up to life in prison. There has been insane and explosive testimony inside of the court. So these are the charges that he's facing. If convicted of sex trafficking, he could face a minimum of 15 years, maximum life in prison. If convicted of engaging in prostitution, he could face 10 years in prison. This is why listen, if you are able to stack these charges, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you're able to see life in prison for Diddy. You may never see Diddy as a free man ever again. Well, there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, could Trump pardon Diddy? I hope not. Trump might pardon Diddy. What other celebs has he pardoned? Trump said he would consider a pardon for Diddy if convicted. President Trump was sort of caught off guard with this question, but he kind of off the cuff said, hey, Diddy's been really mean to me. But, I think about it. I really hope that he doesn't. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the full update on the Diddy trial from Fox. What a wild one. What a wild one. Okay, so expect to see, hopefully, a return tomorrow for what's about to happen to Diddy. But it's not looking good for him. When juries return this quickly, it typically means really bad things for guys like Diddy. Okay, here's the news.
Hey, Dana, great to be with you. So this is another explosive moment in the courtroom during this 2-month-long trial. Jurors announcing this afternoon that they were unable to reach a unanimous decision on count 1, the most serious charge in this case, racketeering conspiracy. Jurors sent back a note just before 4:30 local time this afternoon to let the court know that they had reached a verdict on counts 2 through 5, but could not reach a unanimous decision on count 1. Again, the most serious charge in this case. Right now, the judge is talking with both sides about what to do next. He has told the courtroom he does not want to give a partial verdict. So now he's weighing 2 other options, which would be sending the jury back to continue deliberations or giving some version of an Allen charge, which would be, which in most cases would be instructing the jurors to go back and continue deliberations on the count that they can't reach a consensus on. So right now we're waiting to learn more from inside the courtroom. But I can tell you when this note was sent back today, it's the 6th note between the 2 days of deliberations. Defense attorneys were very quickly huddled around Sean Diddy Combs inside the courtroom. And we saw that one defense attorney hugged another. And this is really a key moment in this trial. For over the course of 2 months, prosecutors have argued to jurors that Diddy, with an inner circle, created a sex crime ring to force and coerce women into drug-fueled sex parties called freak-offs with male escorts while he watched. They called a variety of witnesses, 34 to be exact, including Diddy's ex-girlfriends and accusers, former employees, and law enforcement investigators. And prosecutors say their testimony, along with bank, flight, hotel records, salacious text, and videos, all prove Diddy is guilty of these charges. The defense, of course, takes a much different stance. Defense attorney Mark Agnifilo, in his closing argument, told jurors this is an exaggerated case, and he repeatedly called it a false trial. He insisted that all the sexual encounters were consensual, and he painted these accusers as women who have agency. In fact, he said about ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura, he described her as a woman who likes to have sex, and he said good for her. So you just right there, it paints the difference, the stark difference between the arguments in this case. And right now, the latest that we're learning from inside the courtroom is that jurors are unable to reach a verdict on count one, racketeering conspiracy, the most serious charge. If Diddy were to be found guilty on that charge, he could spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. I'd say the next most serious charge in this case is sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Now, we don't know how jurors have decided on those charges of sex trafficking, but if he were to be found guilty on those charges, the next most serious, he could spend up to 15 years in prison, up to life in prison. So 15 years to life in prison. And then the last charge is transportation to engage in prostitution. We also know jurors reached a unanimous consensus on that charge. We have seen a lot of action here outside the courtroom, a lot of activity, supporters of Diddy, others who want to see him behind bars for the rest of their life. They're all gathering here outside the courtroom right now, waiting to find out what the judge decides to do next.